Hello everyone and welcome back again to another Management Information System lessons. Now there are a couple concepts I would like to cover in this lesson. As you can see here, I have my console application is up and running because I need to specify some certain stuff like what is implicit typing, what are they, how do they look like, what are actually object initialization syntaxes. Okay. Now, first of all, what is actually implicit typing? Sometimes people write like this: int I equals to 10. This is called implicit typing. Implicit typing, this is not implicit, explicit typing. Okay. Implicit typing is going to be var j equals to 20, for instance. This is called implicit typing. Okay? Why you need this? This is a very good question. There are actually two reasons for that, not only one. The first reason, which could occur to you, or could occur to many people, is the compiler has to be smart, because, for example, this 20 is a whole number, right? If you look at it, it says that it's an integer. I mean, look at j. If I hover over j, which is never assigned, let me try to console right line this j. Okay, if I go over j over here, you see it says int j. So the compiler is smart enough to figure out what is the type of this guy. Okay, if you have an integer like this, you can have yeah, I mean it says already that okay, let me do it like this. It says already that it is integer, so basically there's no difference. Okay, now why people will do that? First of all, some people say it is less to type. Of course, for you, var and int, they are 3 letters, whereas list to type. But sometimes when you have something like list of string equals to lst, which is lst equals to new string, some people write even a bigger ones like dictionary of tuples, let's say, and that tuple takes, I don't know, string and integer, and I could have even more, and I can have it has another tuple which has, I don't know, float and double, and you close this, and this is my awkward dictionary equals to new that. Now you see, let me collapse this because I don't need it. Now you see how large definition like this, you see how many typing it is. Now of course, if you look at it, I could substitute this. Now you see my awkward dictionary is already written, my awkward dictionary. Now if I mean it's made of that crazy tuple things. Now if I take out this thing and I put var in here, it is quite obvious that my dictionary is this thing, right? And if you look at here, it's already said there, it is a type of that strange dictionary which I have improvised. Now this is one of the reasons why people like implicit typing. Another thing, the catch to this thing, why to use implicit typing, you never do this. It is not allowed, because for the compiler, he doesn't understand what is it, because implicit typing implies that you have, when you make up a variable, you have to define what that variable is so the compiler will know. It's like when you come to someone and you say, that guy told you to do something, and then when you say, who is that guy, you know, because you have to define who's that guy who told you to do something. You see, I mean, even in a real life situation, you really need to define some certain stuff. You cannot say implicitly something and you don't define it. So the compiler really needs something to figure it out. So is it like is like 2.5, which is gonna be in my case double? Is it 2.5f, which is gonna be, I don't know, float? Is it gonna be whatever? Is it gonna be a string? You see, so it has to be defined. This is the catch about the vars. Okay, and please understand this as well. These, once you define them, once the x equals to whatever thing you put here, 10.2, whatever you put here, x, for example, right now got double. In the runtime, x will never change its type. So once you define it with a double number, the x is going to be always double. If you said here equals to new list of people, new list of string, because I don't have people class for now. Okay, if you look at it, sorry, let me take this out. If you look at it, it's going to be a list of strings, and it will never change. It will never be array of strings. It will never be a linked list of strings or a linked list of integers. It will be always a list of strings. Okay, it never changes. Okay, so don't confuse this with any other concept. If you are interested in changing the type of a variable in runtime, check out the dynamic keyword, but I will not cover it here because it's completely out of the scope of the classes. Okay, now this is all about the implicit typing. Now let us go to object initialization syntax. Now imagine the following. I have a class person, and I have it has like the guy has, or whatever person have, first name, get and set, public string, last name, get and set, public string, age, get and set. Now imagine we have person like this. Now basically what I've shown you in the last past lessons, when I tell you please create a new object of a person, you usually type person, p, or person in small letters, person, equals to new person, and you say person dot first name is gonna have whatever, so I will put my name in there, person dot last name equals to this, and you say person dot age equals to, because it's should be an int, sorry about that. You can make it double if you want to, if you would like to say 2.5 years or 100, doesn't matter. So this is one way of creating an object. Another way of creating an object, I could say var person, and I say var person2 equals to new person, and I can go on with the same thing. So person 2, 2, 2. Basically this is exactly the same as this. Just the thing is, I just say implicitly that person is a person 2, or a type of a person class. In other one, I could just say var or person, it doesn't matter again, person equals to new person, and instead of putting these brackets, I will put actually a curly bracket. And in here, once I hit the space key, imagine this, you get the properties. Now I can say first name equals to new, last name after a comma, of course, last name equals to initialization way, comma, age equals to 200. Okay, this is person 3. This is another way of initializing an object. Okay, and it is completely valid. Right now I can come over here and I say console.writeLine, and I can say here person3 dot first name plus person3 dot last name. Okay, now in here I can say yeah, let me just try let me try put a small spacing over here between them. Control F5, and as you can see here I got new initialization way. So this is another way of defining an object. Now Microsoft introduced us something which is called anonymous object. This is the second reason why implicit typing exists. Okay, now what is exactly an anonymous object is? Now imagine the following: you have a database and you have customers and you have cities table. Okay, so customers are in a city, okay, and you have classes for customers and cities. Suddenly, with an ORM in the middle, I ask you, please, object relational mapping, which we're going to cover in the next lesson, okay, because object relational mapping will convert your objects, will take the objects from your classes, convert them into tables and rows, into rows and columns, and when you retrieve the data from your database to your application, will retrieve them in form of objects. So these rows and columns will be converted into objects. Okay, this is the job of the ORM. I'm gonna say it again probably in the next lesson. So basically, basically when you are trying to retrieve, let's say, a query from a database that says, okay, I'm going to retrieve the first name and the last name of the customer and which city he is in. Now, if you look in your class diagrams, you have only a customer and a city. You don't have a class which holds only the name, the first name and the last name and the city name. You don't have that class. You have a class of a city, you have a class of a customer that contains a lot of members than what you are retrieving. So in order to solve this issue, the ORM could return to you an anonymous object, an object that doesn't have a class. If you want me to show you how this is happening, I can do this: var anonymous object. Actually, the name is up to you, okay? And I'm gonna come here, say new, and I can open the bracket and I say cool idea equals to indeed. I hope that I spelled it right. And I like it is gonna equal to sure. Okay, now if you look at the anonymous object, you say anonymous object, it's there, and it's one of the type of the anonymous types. And when I hit enter, if I hit the dot, I get actually these two properties which I've created them. Okay, and I actually can access them and modify them. In fact, I can even send them to my console. And I can say here anonymous object dot cool idea, and let me control F5 this guy. And as you can see here, I got indeed, which is this one. Okay, now you can actually create an object out of the cloud which doesn't exist in your classes. In fact, when the compiler will see this, he will generate for you a class, and he's gonna call it anonymous underscore, and he give it certain ID, and he will create exactly the same thing: public string cool idea get set, public string and I like it get as set, and he will generate the constructor for you. He will generate, actually the compiler will generate for you everything. Okay, because so that's why it's anonymous, you know, so that's why you don't need actually to create a class. It's anonymous object. It's an object which doesn't have a class. So the compiler will make up one for you, so you can actually start using it within the memory. Also, this is very important because when you start working on your seminars, you're gonna start selecting several values from several tables, and you have to combine them into some sort of a list, and a list always accepts only objects, and you have to feed that list with these objects. So if these objects doesn't exist into a classes, then you have to generate for them anonymous objects. Okay, later in the next lessons we're gonna see in these stuff in very in a much more detailed way, and I'm gonna point out where you guys usually do mistakes and where usually people fail, and the stuff which you really have to avoid when you are working with anonymous objects and other stuff. Very important thing here is I have to mention before I close up with this lesson is boxing and unboxing. If I say int I equals to 0, let's say 110, that'd be not 0. A boxing will be object j equals to I. Right now, I took the integer I and I boxed it inside. I just made up a box, an object, and I put that I inside that object. Okay? And I closed the box. Now, in order to retrieve that object back again, I have to know the type of j, the type what is inside the box, excuse me. The type of j is object, obviously, but the type of the inside of the box. Cast it back into integer, right? Because I is an integer. I know what is the type of I because I already placed it inside the box and I know what is it. So in order to unbox it or take it out of the box, I have to cast it like this. Now people fall into a trouble when they try to box an anonymous object. If you box an anonymous object, if you done this, if you say object s equals to anonymous object, that's it. You cannot cast that s back again. You cannot get the anonymous object back again. It's impossible. That's it. Okay? So always, if you reconsider, if you're gonna consider reusing the anonymous object which you create like this, if you consider, you say, okay, I'm gonna use this object several times, so I'm gonna send it out from a function and use it into another function, and you pass it out as a parameter with the classes and stuff, then you have to create for it another class. You have to, because in this way anonymous objects will be useful only to grab parts of the data and then send them out to represent them in some sort of way. Of course, there are a lot of usages for them, but for in your case of your seminars, you're going to use anonymous objects to send them on the form to represent the final result on Data Grid View or in a reporting service. Do not fill a combo box, which we're going to see later in the next lessons. Do not fill a combo box with anonymous objects. You cannot select something which is anonymous. You're gonna see some data printed in front of you, but when you try to select the data and try to cast it back to reuse it back again, you can't. Okay, so we're gonna see how to deal with anonymous objects in detail. But please again, if you do this, this boxing part, then you have to know that you're gonna actually project that S somewhere on the screen. Okay, so you're gonna do something similar to this. You see how it's represented? Excuse me, let me just throw that here. You see how it's represented? Angular brackets, call ID equals to indeed, and I like it equals to sure. You see, it's gonna present it like that. If you throw this to a Data Grid View will generate the columns and rows for you. But you cannot actually cast something that looks like this. You cannot actually grab what is inside something like that. Okay, so please take care about this point very much, because most of the students fail really to notice this stuff. They say, okay, haha, I understood, but when it comes to practice, once they start coding, they do the exact same mistake. They fill a combo box with anonymous objects, which is kind of strange. Okay, So in the next lessons, we're gonna see these stuff in a much more detail. Thanks a lot for your attention.